Rude behavior caused Craig's face to crease in confusion. Aspen still didn't understand why his gaze wasn't working because previously he could read everyone, regardless of their rank. He saw Kim's back and tried using his skill repeatedly but to no avail. At that moment, the young man turned and looked directly at the lecturer with a faint smile. Aspen was so shocked by this young man that he stared at him with wide eyes. Then he saw the White King behind Kim, and the man's level froze. The main character sat at his school desk, looking for clues about who had given him this rank. Then, 3 of Craig's followers approached him, clearly dissatisfied with the upcoming conversation. One of them said that Jacob was looking for John and asked him to come along with them. The main character smiled at him and turned the page, saying that he didn't want to. However, the thug said that his aunt's restaurant could get into trouble if he didn't comply. The bully looked at Kim with disdain and continued to threaten him with trouble, not forgetting to mention that the main character had no parents. However, the man cut the thug's words short with a precise and powerful punch to his face. An explosion occurred that destroyed the library door. All the objects in the room were overturned, bookshelves broke and were thrown to the floor, and books were scattered in irregular piles on the floor. Kim lifted the thug above him by his throat and demanded to know Craig's whereabouts. James was waiting for the main character in the high school gym with his bodyguards. He used the skill to lower Kim's level, but it didn't work, and the bodyguards didn't understand why. Craig smiled at the main character and started a conversation as if they were old friends. Kim felt uncomfortable with this tone and listened silently to everything his enemy said. James' bodyguard was William Kelly Jean, a first-level hunter. Craig made Kim an unexpected offer, inviting him to join his future company because he didn't need losers like Thomas. He needed geniuses like Kim. James said that if Kim forgot past grievances, he would gain fame, success, and wealth. He would have continued his speech longer if Kim hadn't cut him off, saying his words were nonsense again. The main character was uninterested in everything Craig said. His skin began to form a layer of stone, and his hands turned into a strong shield. Kim said that James had crossed the line. Craig was shocked, clearly unprepared for rejection from someone like Kim. Flames blazed around him, and he said that a dog like the main character should know his place. At that moment, Keegan placed both his hands on the gym floor, forming some kind of magic circle. He used a shielding skill to prevent people outside from noticing what was happening inside. William dusted off his hands and said that this way, no one would notice the fight, then face the students. He didn't expect the fight to have already started. The 2 men flew around the hall, hitting each other. They continued to fight, their powers clashing and forming bright flashes. James threw a deadly punch at the main character, causing an explosion that sent Kim flying backward, bright red blood splattering from his mouth. James, inspired by his small victory, laughed while looking at the main character. The personal bodyguard watched the fight and felt pity for the man who was a puppet in Craig's hands. Suddenly, Kim reappeared from behind the flames and slid toward James with an attack. However, William realized that this kid didn't have a chance against the rot patties. But suddenly something happened that changed his mind and left him frozen in awe. Kim took the initiative, switching from defense to attack, forcing Craig to retreat and defend. Unexpectedly, the main character punched James in the face with his stone fist. Craig was thrown back, and dust and debris from the gym floor flew everywhere. The personal bodyguard didn't understand how Kim could fend off James. Craig lay on a pile of broken boards, trying to catch his breath and calm down. He shouted that he couldn't move and didn't understand what was happening to him. Kim stood, covered in blood but smiling, folding his arms in a victorious gesture because he had finally managed to combine many skills. Of course, his skill to paralyze from level C couldn't penetrate the strong defenses of level S. Therefore, the main character's punches caused gradual paralysis in his opponent's body, making it numb. Now, as the defeated James Craig lay on the ground, Kim slowly approached him. Kelly Jean looked at this young man in confusion, clearly not understanding how he could defeat his superior in a direct fight. Craig admitted while lying down that he had completely underestimated his opponent. He pulled out a small purple gem and held it in front of him, then crushed it with his fingers, saying that now he would fight with full power. At the same time, a massive fire skeleton as tall as a multi-story building appeared before Kim. James controlled it from within, as if inside a shell, half burned. Kim turned and started to run from the monster, finding no better tactic in this situation. Behind him, the monster's fiery fist was already approaching, bringing death and the power of hell. The main character managed to jump far, and the monster missed. At the next moment, the monster roared, spewing a bright pillar of fire from its mouth. While jumping, Kim directed his fiery fist at the monster's face, passing through the fireball. However, the level C shield couldn't withstand the heat of this fire and began to melt, exposing the skin beneath. The main character was pushed back, the shield quickly disappearing, burning in the flames. Kim fell without protection, his back touching the ground, his skin burning. The monster was a manifestation of Craig's skill, the true form of the fiery heart. The artifact James used was nothing more than a magical enhancer stone, the heart of a monster. William realized what was happening and that it was time to stop the fight. He shouted at his superior, asking him to stop and not kill the innocent young man. At that moment, Craig unleashed a powerful punch on his guard who dared to be rude. He was still burning, no longer looking human, consumed by anger that gave him great power. While James was distracted by his subordinate, the main character was already standing up. However, a strong and deadly wave of fire fell directly on Kim. Craig almost went mad, laughing hysterically and asking the main character to die. At the impact site, there was a deep hole penetrating the school floor. William ran to the hole, reaching out to pull Kim out, helping him escape from the confused James. However, the person in the hole punched the personal bodyguard hard in the face with his fist, causing the man to bleed from his mouth and fly several meters in a cloud of smoke. From the rubble emerged the silhouette of Kim standing tall, saying that now he would fight with full power. He had emptied several potion bottles. Kim unleashed his predator, enveloping him with a terrifying red aura. Aspen Klaus stood directly in front of the player academy head, reporting the incident at the school. Gilbert Graham was stunned by the appearance of James Craig and Allison Haight. Two girls standing near the table were also shocked because these figures reached the level of saints. Santa was one of the Japanese hunters whose rank was 5 during the qualification. However, how could an ordinary high school student reach twice the saint's level? Aspen still couldn't understand what was happening, whether it was a mistake or a strange coincidence. After gathering his commission, he was determined to find the man and find out for sure. William fell to his knees, unable to comprehend how what was happening before him was possible. Kim's predator wrapped around the fire monster, squeezing it in a death grip. James also didn't understand how someone like his enemy got such abilities. Kim continued to use the predator, attacking the monster regardless of Craig's shouts about who James' father was or his rank. After all, the main character was sure that the reason they visited the school was because they wanted to test him. Aspen didn't understand why they had to come to the school because of someone like Kim. This statement angered the main character, and he used the beast to show his strength to those present. This time, the number was larger than before and reached its peak. Aspen was surprised because this was not just a coincidence and the level of his power was now higher. A strong and frightening energy emanated from the mysterious young man. Aspen then asked why Kim was there covered in dust. Arthur felt very happy because his cousin had succeeded in the hunting exam last month. According to him, Kim was now almost a god and king to all hunters. The incident that happened in the sports hall had to be covered up by the company members so that no one would know about Kim. At that moment, the main character's phone rang. It was only William calling. A bandaged hand gripped the throat of an unranked person guarding Kim's house. The villain did not understand why this agent was wasting time guarding a small child. His older brother, also a ranked, said that this must be a rising star and would be tested soon. His younger brother, of the same rank, argued with him, thinking that Kim was just an inexperienced child. An elder agreed, saying that he would be a very easy target for them. Just then, a man appeared on the roof, holding a white man by his neck and hitting him. The elder charged at the stranger, wondering who he was and preparing to attack. The stranger released the younger man and turned towards the black-clad one with a smile. Kim struck his opponent with a stone-hard knee, hitting his face directly. Kim said that this was the one they easily dealt with a few hours ago. Apart from 1 billion, the main character spoke about 2 other conditions listed in the agreement. Purple light and chains began to seep from his hands, causing the personal bodyguard to shiver. The Dissolved Awakening department would not be subjected to random punishment. The first condition was that the company had to make every effort to cover up the incident in the sports hall, and all news would say the explosion was caused by a gas leak. The second condition was that William had to tell Kim about all the mercenaries that Jordan would send. Black charged at the main character with a knife strapped to his arm. However, after their previous opponent, these two did not make Kim sweat. The main character struck hard where Black had just attacked, but he jumped and almost attacked Kim from behind. With a powerful kick, the older brother raised dust and stones into the air, but Kim used a concealment technique and ended up right above the black-clad man, with his foot on his head. The main character said that he already knew what skills the brothers had, but they were not exceptional. Kim's eyes turned redder than before, and red light swirled around him again as a result of using the beast. At that moment, a luxurious Rolls-Royce, usually used by the rich and celebrities, moved along the road. Its passenger was Karen Katz, head of the Night Watchers Guild. She made a phone call about how the hunter selection was finished. Her conversation partner was the head of the academy, Gilbert Graham. They discussed who had been selected, students from various schools and different families. Karen then decided to tell her conversation partner more interesting news about a boy who had been approached by Aspen Klaus personally after finding him with his commission. At that moment, Kim's predator skills failed again, making him feel his physical strength was insufficient and there was an overload. The two black and white brothers were tied up and quickly handed over to the agents. The two men discussed enthusiastically that this gang was now causing problems not only for the academy but also for regular school kids. Aspen thanked Kim for neutralizing the two brothers and asked if he knew who was behind the attack. The main character looked away and lied, saying he didn't know anyone. Klaus said that the list of exam participants might be revealed and he needed to request reinforcements. However, Kim was more worried about the possibility of a new attack and the fact that the predator refused to work. If he couldn't use his skills due to a lack of physical ability, there was no point in having those skills at all. By winning the battle, he could no longer increase his rank because the predator wasn't working. So, he only had one option left, to hone his skills and determined to use them. A friendly girl from Blackhead Gym named Carmen met the man and gave them the club's guidebook. Arthur was surprised because Kim had brought him to the most expensive and successful hall in the city. Carmen realized that in front of her were regular school students and wanted to refuse to serve them. However, Mary handed a gold VIP card to Kim and asked him to register the two of them. The girl was shocked because this was an elite card from the Alchemist Guild. She didn't understand how a student could get such a card. Was he just a relative of an influential alchemist or the owner? Looking at the man, she didn't know what to do because if she refused, there might be problems. Then, a man appeared behind her, muscular with a beard and talent. This was the strongest B-class trainer in this club, who reached his level on his own, Bottle. He was famous for destroying newcomers in this gym and liked to stand and show off his muscles with his hairstyle and beard. Bottle looked like a rooster to the main character and described him as weak. The big man's face changed immediately, and he stared at Kim firmly. Carmen and Arthur behind the main character were shocked by the man's behavior. Bottle asked Kim if he thought he was stronger than him, and the main character challenged a bet that he indeed was stronger. In confusion, Bottle said that the kid didn't know what he was up against. The main character and the big man stood on the rocky road, and their image looked like a three-dimensional picture. The competitors sat in large chairs, immersed in a program called Virtual Carrier Training. In this program, they had to carry the heaviest possible load, kill B-class monsters, and reach the goal in the shortest time possible. The start signal was given, and Bottle immediately headed into battle with a heavy backpack. He gathered a group and defeated monsters one by one, heading towards victory. While doing all this, he said that the unmatched career would make Kim look like a first grader. However, he didn't notice that the main character was already far ahead, moving at a higher speed. Behind him was a backpack several times larger than Bottle's load, and the monsters were scattered like ninepins. In a few minutes, the main character set a maximum record, ensuring victory. Bottle was so shocked that he hadn't moved at all since seeing Kim. The main character announced that the competition was over and Bottle had to pay for his membership. A month later, after the announcement of the Hunter exam, the long-awaited day finally arrived. Students from all over the country gathered in the stadium. They were all different from each other but had one thing in common: they were all very anxious before facing the exam. Among them were rising stars like Taken from the Undefeated, a rank in direct combat with iron skin. There was also an A-rank droid from the Alchemist Guild with excellent combat instincts. Antonio, unmatched in his country, was also present, and of course, Allison, a wholly awakened mage from Japan, was also taking the exam. At that moment, an A-ranked reporter complained while looking at the crowd of students in front of him. He understood that he would not be able to record celebrities, let alone interview them. He continued to complain and didn't notice another competitor approaching from behind. He was also unhappy with the many people there, and he had to walk through the crowd. The reporter then urged the young man to give him an interview, which almost made Kim late for the exam that was about to start. However, he knew he had to think about his image going forward. The man saw the crowd gathering and jostling, waiting for the exam to start. Then, Allison saw that Kim had changed significantly over the month. She wondered what had happened to his body in such a short time, and Kim didn't understand what Allison was doing there and why she suddenly attacked him. He didn't understand how Allison could do it. Allison started talking about how great power comes with great responsibility. Allison acknowledged Kim's power and said she didn't think he would be able to defeat Antonio. Kim still didn't understand what she wanted from him and asked why she suddenly started this. At that moment, she attacked where Kim was standing, but he managed to jump away. Allison launched a snow attack that hit the entire stage surface. Kim couldn't escape the attack because even his camouflage skills didn't work there at all. After that, he didn't notice Allison's foot directly targeting his face and threatening to obey him. Allison threw her shoe at him while jumping, causing her opponent to grit his teeth. The snow attacks continued to strike Kim and knock him down from Allison. Kim failed in one attack after another, unable to escape or hide anywhere. Suddenly, a large ice peak hit Kim and threw him into the air. Kim fell, and Allison said he didn't deserve to be a hunter because he was unqualified. Kim trembled as he listened to her words, saying that all he did was violence. But the anger from the situation shocked Allison. Kim, after pushing himself hard, remained standing despite numerous attacks. He stood up and called Allison a coward, accusing her of trying to humiliate him using the exam. Allison was shocked by these words, as she had no such intentions. Angered, she grasped a large ice staff, threatening Kim with defeat. Kim's stone shield had long lost its power, and his remaining skills were worthless. He then decided to use the only thing that might work in this situation. He rushed at Allison, knocked her to the ground, and held her down. Then he kissed her on the lips. Allison was stunned by this enemy's action, not understanding his motive. However, the purpose of this act was not the kiss itself but to use a stronger paralysis skill from close range. Such techniques become much more potent when penetrating an opponent. Allison, shocked and paralyzed, lay on her back, unable to move. The outcome of the attack surprised the enemy and increased Kim's charisma by 3 points. Suddenly, a familiar male voice was heard over the loudspeaker announcing that the first stage of the exam was over. Doctors were called to the exam site to evacuate the injured and assist. Despite failing the first stage and losing her badge, Allison advanced to the second stage. Kim attracted attention as, despite only gathering 7 badges, he defeated both Antonio and Allison. Other exam participants whispered behind his back, unable to believe that a C-ranked individual had defeated 2 S-ranked ones. As he walked along the hospital corridor, Kim thought it would be good to have healing skills since, after the exam, he couldn't even stand. Suddenly, a shout near his ear drew Kim's attention. Antonio, who attacked Kim as soon as he wasn't looking, almost intercepted Antonio's blow without understanding what or why he was doing it. Antonio continued his attack, shouting that Kim wouldn't be able to do anything here. The commotion drew the attention of other hospital patients, forcing them to come closer and watch. They realized that Antonio might be seeking revenge for the exam, and they cheered for him, calling his name, as they would benefit if someone like Kim failed. Then, Antonio sent a powerful release toward the fans, forcing them to shut up. Kim turned to him, smiled, and invited Antonio to fight fairly. Antonio laughed madly, angered by the arrogant statement. But suddenly some force fell from the ceiling and pressed him down with tons of weight, causing Antonio to fall and hit the floor, breaking the hospital corridor tiles. He screamed, not understanding why he lost again and couldn't get up. Then, the man who explained the rules from the screen in the first exam approached. Kim sweated profusely, struggling to stay on his feet. Despite the difficulty, he knew exactly who was in front of him. It was Robert Griffin, an S-ranked hunter, one of the strongest hunters expected to achieve an SS rank. Robert was surprised that the young man was still standing while others couldn't. Then, a colored ball appeared in his hand, shimmering with bright colors and emitting a faint gray mist. Kim felt the gravity affecting him, and the tiles under his feet exploded. However, he stood firm. He knew that the skills of an awakened hunter and an S rank were very different, but he didn't expect this. Robert laughed, still surprised by the man's skills, and said that now he would use a technique that even veteran fighters couldn't withstand. The ball in his hand shone brighter and vibrated, seemingly emitting waves that altered the space. However, to Kim's surprise, something distracted Robert. 2 doctors flew into the hospital corridor, angry at their superior's behavior. He said he was just disciplining the school students, but they didn't believe him, saying he wanted to expel them even before the second exam began. Robert stopped listening to the interfering paramedics and smiled broadly as he saw Kim catching his breath. Griffin fully turned to the exhausted Kim and asked his name. After a moment of hesitation, Robert realized that this was the same C rank who defeated stronger students and smiled at the fact that something interesting had finally emerged. He patted Kim on the shoulder and said that his goal might be to become an S-rank hunter and added that he looked forward to it. In an instant, Robert was several meters behind Kim, heading for the exit, but the elegant attempt to escape from the paramedics' conversation failed, and they chased him while still cursing. In the next stage, the exam applicants were gathered in the middle of a forest, right in front of a large stage. Robert stood on it and welcomed the students, asking if they were done resting. The men were both surprised and angry because their treatment was called a rest. Griffin announced that the gate to the second exam location was behind him. This gate led to a D-rank dungeon with real monsters. Undoubtedly, the students were shocked by this information. He asked every 5 people to form a team under the leadership of one of the hunters and evaluate all their skills. Necessary materials, such as weapons and consumables, were provided by the academy. Kim stood among the crowd of men, listening attentively to each examiner. He knew that a D-rank dungeon would be very easy even for beginners. However, the situation could become more complicated if this was a double dungeon from the end of the world. This was the first ranked dungeon in the world found at a D-rank level, then the first exploration group was killed and the survivors fled. Kim thought it would be good if the disaster could be prevented, but no one believed his words. So, when he entered the gate, he decided that he would try not to join the first group and ensure everything went smoothly. However, 4 students led by a mustache hunter were already waiting for him outside the gate. He was a first-class agent with a rather elegant style. Kim recognized him and remembered that his skill was detecting horrifying dungeons. Then, Kim realized he couldn't avoid trouble. A horde of shapeless monsters charged at the students from all directions. However, the examiners were not easily frightened and counterattacked the monsters. The wizard applauded the children and was pleased with their skills, which had never been involved in real combat. He praised them loudly and described their skills. Not only that, but he was also the first to realize that the dungeon was dangerous. At that moment, Kim turned and called everyone to follow him, urging them to move forward before they were buried there. The group continued moving through the dungeon, and the professor illuminated the path for everyone. Kim carried the injured girl. Although the illusion disappeared, the situation did not improve. However, the chasm space changed entirely. Moreover, the injuries they received in battle were severe, and the examiners couldn't just wait for rescue. Their only way out was to find a gate that led out of the dungeon. They found a large door completely sealed with a skull image. One of the men proposed that entering there might be dangerous, and the wizard agreed with him. However, hesitation was not an option, as they would die there without opening the door. In the hall, a dead knight was holding a sword in front of him and kneeling. This inspired the man because he was alone there and seemed harmless. However, at the same time, another horde of monsters appeared behind him. The entire group was shocked by this development, which was unfavorable for them. More and more monsters came from all directions, and tongues of flame erupted from under their swords. Torches lit up everywhere in the hall, illuminating more legions of monsters. The researchers froze, not knowing what to do because they were surrounded by deadly forces threatening them with death. Behind the knights, sitting on a throne, was someone much larger and more terrifying than his comrades. He was the owner of the Apocalypto dungeon, the Lord of Death of S rank. He shouted that once he arrived there, the battle would begin, and the knights nodded in agreement. One of them raised his weapon and pointed it at the exploration group. This gesture was familiar to Kim, and he said that the monster wanted to fight. The men whispered that they couldn't bear it. They were very tired, and their mana was exhausted. Kim asked them to stay calm because their goal was not to win but to get out of there. However, the men started running, shouting that they just needed to get back to where they started. One of the nearest monsters raised its blade and, with a powerful strike, hit those who dared to flee the battlefield. Their blood splattered onto the wizard and Kim, who was stunned and had no time to comprehend anything. The professor said he would buy them time and ordered Kim to find an exit. Kim lifted the girl he was carrying on his shoulder and threw her. The wizard ordered Kim to shut up and said this wasn't for someone who had awakened from a low rank. Kim stared blankly at the place where the professor stood in front of him, and suddenly a wall appeared behind the wizard, separating the students from the battlefield. A man said he always knew that from an S rank, the chances were high. At that moment, a Death Knight charged at the wizard, ready to kill him with his sword. The professor folded his arms, and a strange green triangle appeared between them, countering the enemy's attack with a retaliatory blow. The wizard managed to keep the monsters away from him with a powerful strike and stood with his hands in front of him. Kim had no choice but to agree with the professor and move away from the wall. However, he realized that all the injured were already dead, and this thought shocked him. The barrier summoned by the wizard suddenly collapsed behind Kim. Kim turned to protect himself from the dust and debris flying toward him. In front of him stood a force of Death Knights, and the sword of one of them fell on the back of the already dead professor. The next moment, the monster raised its blood-stained blade and pointed it at Kim, clearly challenging him to a fight. Kim noticed that the sage ring had flown off the wizard's finger. This was his chance. The Death Knight raised its blade, ready to deliver a fatal blow. However, Kim skillfully dodged the weapon, ran to the side, grabbed the ring, and put it on his finger. Kim prayed that his plan would work. The monsters around Kim were already threatening him with death, but a red spark exploded from the man's hand the next moment. A loud explosion sounded, shattering the stone knights into pieces. The Lord saw this and did not understand what was happening and how the boy could do that. The awakening window informed Kim that the sage ring was activated, increasing all abilities tenfold. But the main thing was to meet all the requirements and give in to the predator's seal that had finally fallen.